All right, welcome back. This is a small note to you listeners. I have some plans for the show coming up. Thus, the main weekly episodes, or rather, I should say, the episodes based on the campaigns, will be named The Curse of Caza Dune, where the overall series will still be called Tales of Teledar. Thanks for listening. Oh, and one more thing. I'm done with the long chapter headings like Dickens. I can't do it anymore. I'm not creative enough. The Curse of Caza Dune, from the perspective of Lord William Conningsby, PhD, Chapter 1. After a few long hours of research, Shava, Bill, and I decided to leave the library and look around Hollowhelm. Belzerin said that he would remain at the library and continue researching. While we left, there was no sign of Jaximus. There were, however, 2 guards at the gates to the Everthian estate. Shava listened closer and relayed to us that they were having a heated discussion about some missing persons in the town. Bill went to further interview the captain, who was now storming away from the estate. Shava remained lounging on the steps while I went to investigate the statue in the square to inspect a piece of paper on the placard. It was a missing poster for someone called Valbender Anlaf. The guard captain was flustered, and he was speaking loud enough I could hear. "What?" Then I heard Bill's voice respond. "I was simply asking about what you and the sergeant were discussing. You were quite loud." It was nothing. There were reports of missing people in the town, and he does not see it the same way I do. I think that we should be taking this more seriously. Who went missing? The smith, Valbender Anlaf. How long has he been missing? 2 or 3 days. If you want, we can help look one. It would be nice to have someone actually help. Meet me in the Spinning Crown at 9. I walked up with a small poster. Excuse me, sir, but you also mentioned something about a archivist. Would this be him? I don't know anything about that, but that man's the smith, Valbender. I'll talk more about him if you come to the Crown tonight. After that, the captain walked away, and we all walked to the estate. The Everthian estate was a massive building with a large wooden gate blocking everyone from entry. On the gate was a large knocker made of well-maintained brass. Bill started knocking with his immense gauntlet rather than the knocker. To be fair, he couldn't reach it. After a moment, a woman came to a door. Yes, may I help you? Hello, ma'am. I was just looking for a place with a smithy, if I'm metal and the like. The woman seemed to start a bit. Oh, well, the smith has been missing for quite some time, but you could go to Tim and Tomaz's. Ah, thank you, ma'am. Where might that shop be? The woman pointed to the southeast part of town. The largest courtyard in that direction. Thank you much, miss, Bill said, then he walked away. As the door closed, I saw the knocker from a different angle. The engravings were not just a design. As I looked closer, I saw that it was writing in ancient Vedalken. Due to the age, there was a loss of letters and sometimes even whole words. It was a terrible shame, since ancient Vedalken bases a lot on context. The writing and modifier words surrounding other words can change the meaning of an entire sentence. The only thing that could be made out of this was something to be done with prone to or made by something referred to as crown, probably meaning the king. I threw this in my notes, and then we set off for the shop. On our way to the southeast plaza, I started seeing that people were giving us strange looks. Their eyes seemed to lock onto my clothes and Bill's being a dwarf. No one seemed to look at the ominous shadow that Shava was, though. Arriving at the courtyard, we instantly saw Tim and Tomaz's shop. Hanging under the main sign was a smaller sign that said, "Under Renovations." The door was open. For some reason, Shava and Bill just walked in. "Can you not read Vedalken?" I called after them. "It says under renovations." Inside, there was a man racing back and forth from one counter to another. I leaned on the doorframe, neither inside nor outside of the shop. I looked closely at the balding man as he turned toward Bill. His eyes were green, not purple like the missing poster said Valbender had. I then leaned back to remain out of the oncoming verbal fray. The man looked tired as he turned to us. Yes, can I help you? Bill stepped up. Hello, Essa. I was wondering if you needed any help with the renovating, and if your store's opening again. Oh, we'll be opening shortly, just when Tomas gets back. And for the renovations, we have master craftsmen on it, so I do not think we will need your assistance. The man had a smile that shifted back to his hurried look. Now, please leave. Bill pressed on. Look, Essa, you were just wondering, with me being a dwarf and all, if I could help you around here. Well, Sir Dwarf, it is much appreciated, but I am certain that we are fine with the craftsmen that we have working. Now the store is closed to customers, and I have work to do. Please leave. The man, who I assumed was Tim, went back to rearranging displays. Bill and Shava left the establishment and joined me in the courtyard. I was no longer looking in on the conversation by the last exchange, and had only heard it by how loud they were being. Instead, I was looking up at a statue in the courtyard. The armor was familiar, but I couldn't quite place it. The face of the statue was gone, so there went any historical identification through sketches or painting likenesses. Damn it to the hells! Someone exclaimed from around the statue. I leaned to look around the statue and saw a balding man in a scholar's robes throw a serious amount of notes on the cobblestones, and then storm off. Slinking over, I swiped up the papers, off the street. Reading through, most of the writing was crossed out or scribbled over with other words. The only thing that I could make out was something about 5 statues. I turned to look at the statue next to me. It didn't look particularly special. In fact, it looked like something you'd see in a crypt. Oi, William, what you got there? Just some notes the scholar threw away. It's all gibberish, though. I may need to ask Kai about it. Shall we head back to the library? We all seemed to agree and headed off to the Lanza library. Upon entry, we saw that Kai was talking with some actors about plays. After finishing his conversation, he came back to us. Hello again. What can I help you with now? I stepped forward. It might be nothing, but I was looking for some information on the 5 statues. Swan raised a pale hand to his chin and began to stroke it thoughtfully. We have a few documents on that topic, but not many. The article with the most information is being rented out currently. Curious how you would ask for. 4 scholars came in recently. In fact, they are the people who checked out that historical paper. Interesting. May I ask who they are? Yes, you may. It was checked out by a gold dragonborn named Thankankuth Quelda. He is studying the recent disruption at the northern statue. Strange business, that. I believe that is all I needed. Thank you, Swan. As I left, Bill started talking to Swan about doing some dwarven impossible armor. I didn't care enough to pay attention. Finally, the conversation ended and we left the library. As we headed north, I saw that people were looking at us strange again. Also, there were less here. People, that is. Eventually, though, we got to a small courtyard. In the center was a small pedestal, with bits of statue around it. As we approached, I felt a great sense of unease begin to brew in my chest. I walked to the pedestal and began dusting off the empty base. Bill walked over to the gold dragonborn that Swan mentioned. I proceeded to read the base of the statue. Ancient Vidalcan, being the way that it is, was rather cryptic. The only thing that I could gather was the word wastes, so I took notes. The best that I could figure, with the sixth statue being in the center plaza and a depiction of the Everthians, was that these must be statues or artists' renditions of the 5 barons, back when they existed. As I sat writing notes, the sense of dread seemed to lift off of me a bit. I turned to see that Bill was lashing the statue back together with rope. He had only gotten the legs together. They fit together like puzzle pieces. It appeared that Bill could only get the legs together, since the other bits required mortar and pestle to stay in the same spot. Bill then asked Queldar where he could find some. I met a guy named Stan, the local mason. His shop has been closed since it got torn apart, though. Last I saw, he was at the Bent Spear. So, thus we headed to the Bent Spear to look for the mason Jack. As we entered the fine establishment, we all walked to the bar. Bill and Queldar were talking some smack to each other, which ended in the agreement of an eventual drinking contest. I, honestly, was not paying much attention to my surroundings, but I gathered that some young clerk was giving Caza smack about saying that she had to pay to investigate Jack's room. Eventually, an older woman came along and smacked the youngster across the head. You get on out of here and stop harassing the customers, she barked. Now! Excuse my son, please. You can investigate his room, no pay required. Great. Where is it? Caza asked. Last room on the first floor. With that, Caza took off with the key. I started to interrogate the owner. Excuse me, ma'am, but was there anything strange about Jack while he was here? She seemed to ponder that really hard. A little, I guess. He drank more than I've ever seen him drink, and he seemed to be looking over his shoulder quite often. Also, I didn't see him this morning. He must have just up and left. I was going to continue asking some questions, but was cut off by Bill, who apparently decided to start a drinking competition with Queldar now. The lady mentioned that they had wine, and Bill went on his rant that to dwarves wine is basically water in dwarven holds. Having heard this long-winded rant before, I went to investigate Jack's room. Upon entry, I saw the door was bent, and the carpet near the door had the impression of someone resting there for a prolonged time. He must have slept the entire night against the door rather than in the bed. Caza then pointed out that there were nail holes in the window, like someone nailed it down to lock it shut. I started to do a deeper search of the room, checking things like the bed and the dresser. After pulling out all the drawers, it appeared that they did not take up the full depth of the dresser. Looking on the back, I saw that there was a thin line. It seemed to wobble when the dresser was shaken. Then I found a small keyhole along the line. I looked up and saw Bill and Queldar had joined us now. I could pick this, but I don't want to break it. Anyone got any ideas? She took to the device with the nimbleness of a gunsmith. She quickly disassembled the mechanism and cracked the hidden drawer open. Inside were 3 things that looked like grains of salt and some dirt with white bits in it. Caza snatched up the grains and started to investigate the dirt. She found nothing interesting and moved on. Then Bill pushed me out of the way to take a gander. He, too, was dismissive of the dirt. When I finally got to look at it, I found nothing too interesting. Then I reached out and tasted the dirt. The white bits were bone. Interesting, at least. Then everyone started out of the room, believing that we found everything. But they'd left me to clean up. As I was putting things back, I found a small pile of red dust. Investigating further, I found some poppies, or death's flower, as they only grow on graves. Also, when I disrupted the dust, a strong scent assailed my nostrils. It seemed familiar, like the scent of home. It was myrrh. It smelled like the Guggle farms back home. Outside of Caza Dune and places like it, this stuff was impossible to find, even harder to buy. I bagged the ash and the poppies and left the room. I caught up with the rest of the party. Queldar and Bill were walking in front, and Caza was lagging behind a bit. I showed her the poppies and the myrrh ash so that we could ponder it together. The best we could come up with was that Jack robbed some grave, probably of some rich or famous guy. Eventually, we made our way to the Spinning Crown. It being around 8:30, this was fine for our 9 o'clock meeting when the guard said to meet him. Shava and I sat at a table, and I snatched a beer off of a nearby waiter's tray who wasn't paying attention. Bill and Queldar went to the bar and began the drinking competition. Shava looked on in awe of Bill's drinking capability while I casually looked around, knowing that Bill would just win. Queldar made a bet with the wrong person. Eventually, the contest was done, and Queldar was on the floor. Bill got tapped on the shoulder by the lady we met at the estate. She apparently wanted him to go with her outside, so Shava and I followed the tumbling Bill. I talked to the young lady as we walked. "So, who are you?" "I'm Caroline. I'm the receptionist for the Avethians." "Well, I'm William, and it's a pleasure to meet you." She blushed a little bit at my winning grin, but we didn't talk until we arrived outside. The guard captain was there. Caroline walked back to the estate. The captain guided us off to a side road. "Where are we going?" "To the smith shop. It's a safer place to talk." When we arrived, I tried the door. It was locked. Bill started talking with the guard, and while he was distracted, I jimmied the lock. The door creaked open. "Well, how'd you do that?" "You just had to shake it a bit." "Shall we go inside?" At that, we all headed inside and sat around the front counter area. "So what's going on in this town?" Bill asked. "It's some missing people around town. The smith is the one known to the public, but there are more, namely the Arcanist. He's a high elf. He went missing around the same time as Valbander. The guards, though, don't seem to want to get into those topics. Rather, they would bicker about staying with the crown or joining the union. Valbander was an excellent smith. He learned the same way his parents did, from them, the predecessors. However, no one seems to care. It would be great if someone from outside would come in and have a look at it." After that bit of long-winded speech, I kicked in. Yeah, we can look into it. Also, we're already looking into another missing person named Jack Sturm. Know anything about him?" "I know he was hanging out with Valbander after he had come inside the walls. After Anlaf disappeared, though, I haven't seen or heard much of him. Now, I must be leaving before others get suspicious. People won't look in, so it should be fine if you all stay here for the night." Then the captain left. I set up my bedroll by the door and started making a key out of a blank for the shop. I spent some time before sleeping, jimmying the key in the lock and filing out the pins of the key. Eventually, Shava started talking to me. "So, what is it you do?" I smiled as I did another pass on the key. "I work for the Museum of Kuzdor, where Bill is from. I raid crypts for artifacts and send them over, and Kuzdor pays me." "So, you're a grave robber?" "Please. The tombs I raid are so old they may as well be public property." She then went to bed and left me to my work. Eventually, I too went to sleep. The next morning, I awoke to Bill setting up some sort of summoning circle. Don't get me wrong, I follow Ayun and believe in the existence of the gods, but that's a bit much for me. After he offered a smith's hammer, his face caught on fire. His eyes jutted flames and fire licked out of his mouth. When he was done, the hammer was gone, and he seemed to have a strange sense of foresight. Apparently, Bill got that Jack might be in a large, unfinished, mall-type building next to the plaza. He, however, also insisted that we bring along Queldar, who had to be heavily hungover. Eventually, we went to get Queldar out of his spinning crown room at 7:30, and we all headed to the large mall. Inside the walls, it was obvious that the building had not been finished. The ceiling only started 20 feet in, and the rest of the building was dark hallways and large rooms. According to Bill, the entire building was being used as a sort of homeless shelter for all those who used to live in the now destroyed buildings outside the walls. Walking in, this fact was kind of obvious. There was a snuffled fire in the corner after walking down a hallway there into a larger room. There was a vaulted ceiling and a small bonfire in another corner. Walking over to the group's bonfire, I asked if any of them knew about the mason Jack. The guy who I asked said no, but it was rather obvious that he did know something, and upon uttering the name, 3 of the small group peeled off and left. I tried to go down another hall and then turned back because we couldn't make out a thing in the pitch dark. Walking back to the fire, Shava asked the man something and got led off to a corner. I saw that she had hitched something under her coat as she was following the guy. I struck by with my whip ready. Then, out of the corner came a black kobold. He took a swing at Shava with a small black knife and landed the slash. She responded with a burst of fire from whatever was under her coat, and then backed off. I flicked at the thing with my whip and left a scar on its face from its forehead to its chin. It hissed and swung at Shava again. The man was trying to run off, but Bill tackled him and placed his sizable boot on his back. Shava let out another belt of fire from what I now saw was a small cannon. It scorched the thing again, and this time it looked bad. However, the kobold was still alive. Whatever it was, it must not have been a kobold. As I thought this, the thing began to stand. It had to be 7 feet tall and was covered in black scales. It started climbing the walls to try and escape. I hefted my rifle and took aim. "Cover your ears," I called out. Then I took a few shots. The thing spun around but took the other in the chest. As it skittered away, I took a few more, and again it swung, but I predicted that, and the next piece of lead sunk into its skull at 400 yards a second. The thing fell to the ground dead. I tried to loot the corpse, after finding some thieves' tools. Once I had to grab them, however, the tools dissolved. Apparently, this is due to some form of special smithing process that I did not know of that was meant to stop people from stealing from you. In my personal opinion, this is kind of strange to do on something meant for thieves, but that's fine. As this was happening, I heard Bill interrogating the guy he tackled. "Look here, lad, that there's my friend you tried to get killed. It would be much appreciated if you told us why." "I wanted you and wanted Jack. I played dumb until you came along. It thought you knew something and told me to get you. I just didn't want to die. Did you see it?" I was investigating the body closely at this point. "Yeah, I'm seeing quite a bit of it right now. Still, it's dead now, so you can tell us where Jack is. We're trying to help him out of his predicament." "No, there are more. Many more. And many more will get Jack if you don't help him. Tell us where he is, and we can help. Trust me." "All right, I cut the man off. "Write it here." Extending out a notebook and pen, the man took it. He scribbled down that Jack was taking refuge in some secret speakeasy next to the Averthian estate. I read the note, scribbled it down in my own otherwise illegible handwriting, then tore off the original page and tossed it into the fire and watched it burn to ash. We left them all and met back up with Queldar, who apparently left before we even entered the first room. We dropped him off at the Spinning Crown as we passed by, then we walked off to the northern side of the estate. Walking up, it was obvious that the house was just a house, and the guys fixing the stairs were bouncers. I was apparently silently nominated to be the voice of the party since the others eventually just stopped walking. I approached the gentleman on the stairs. "Hello, gentlemen. I was wondering if you would allow me into your establishment." The goons swapped grins. "You want to come into our house?" "Kind sirs, I was recommended here by a friend." "What are you, some kind of square?" I paused a bit at this use of language. "Squares? Me?" Then Bill walked up and started whispering to me. "Oh, I think he's trying to say that you aren't straight. Squares are what they call straight guys in these kinds of speakeasies." "Well then, friend, why don't you go up and talk with him, seeing as how you're so good at doing that?" "What? I'm saying you're good at pleasing men, you rock-brained monkey. Bill developed a look of confused anger. It was like he knew that he was supposed to be angry, but didn't know why. I walked back up to be in the front of the bouncers. Well then, gentlemen, I'm no square, but what would you want me to be? A circle? We don't want no circles. I was now getting a little heated at the use of strange geometric linguistics and ignored the double negative. Well then, what would you want me to be? I burst out. A rhombus? The guards looked really confused now. Then Bill called them gay. Then they picked up their boards and hickory. Whoa, gentlemen, we don't need to go there. I held out 3 gold. Please, take this for the repairs. The guards stopped. One spoke up. Make it 5. I felt 2 coins land in my hand and turned to see Bill putting away his coin purse. After this, a gnome wearing robes came out of the house. Hey, what's going on here? This guy wanna get in, but he might be squares, and one of them thought we were gay. The gnome pulled his face in his hand and groaned. Gentlemen, squares are what we mean by gods. Now, look, I'm gonna crack open your minds. Lie about what you're here for, and I'll melt your brains. I again was forced to speak for the party. We're here to see Jack. We want to help him. The gnome paused for a moment. Yep. Clean. Come in. The gnome walked through the door of the house. While we followed, we entered a different location, and not by walking through the door. We now found ourselves in a tavern that was too big to exist in the small house. The ceiling was about 3 stories up, but the second floor was just a series of balconies. It was apparent there used to be a second story, yet some of the overhangs were just crumbled, fenceless wooden overcroppings. Oh, and the people. There was just about every common race. Everywhere. Not knowing what to do, we walked to the bar. The bar was a strange piece of furniture. Rather than just being leveled, it was completely sloped. Along the counter were hooks to grab drinks so that the tender would slide down. Not too long after our arrival, we were greeted by a floating glass. Hey, newcomers, I'm Tony. What can I get you? Bill ordered a scotch, I ordered a lager, and Shava went without. So, what are you here for? Way to make check, Bill said. Oi, keep your voice down. What do you want with him? I leaned in. We're here on business. We are trying to help him out of his current predicament. Alright, I'll see if I can arrange a meeting. Wait. As we waited, a Goliath walked up to the high end of the bar and parked himself in a tall stool. He turned his huge head to me and Shava and nodded in greeting. Hello, folks. I'm Pal. Who might you be? We exchanged names with the kindly quarter giant. So, where are you lot from? Shava spoke first. Nowhere, really. Pell let out a hearty laugh. Don't give me that. No one is from nowhere. Don't you have a home? Well, I've been wandering around for so long, I guess you could say that my home is Polska. Pell seemed displeased at this explanation, but not displeased enough to keep pressing. And you? The middle of nowhere in the eastern desert. Moved to Polska, though, so now my home is in Hereford. What about you? I come from Rockfield. Decided to go on a long journey at the wrong time of my life. Yeah, friend, the current situation sucks. It does. Eventually, the floating glass arrived again. Aye, gents, Tony's voice came. I got you a meeting. Follow the glass. As we walked away, I bid farewell to Pell in hopes of seeing him again. We walked into a back room. In the back of this small storeroom, there was a door that Tony knocked on. As it opened, we all entered. Inside, there was a wood elf with a curved sword readied. We came with him, I said, trying to find the floating glass. I dropped it. I found the shattered glass on the floor and pointed at it. We came with him. The elf sheathed his sword. Spot him! You have visitors. A groaning man got up from the bed. It's Sturm, you bastard. Oh, who are you? I stepped forward again. We're here. Well, actually, the dwarf is here to do some business. She and I are here to help you out with whatever you've gotten yourself into. All right. Business first, I guess. Bill stepped forward. I was wondering if I could buy some more from you. Oh, just go into the shop. Here, have the key. If you're willing to go out there, you can take what you want. Now, what are all of you here for? We were wondering if you knew anything about Valbander's disappearance, and why there are large-scale things following you. Oh, you're here for that. Well, it's not too strange, I guess. Valbander got visited by some guy, Flataxe, I think his name was, not too long ago. Had to be maybe a month. And was given something by him. I then went to take refuge after my shop broke down. And he brought our buddy, the jeweler, guy named George, great guy. He brought him in to look at it, and I've never heard him that excited. That little scrawny jeweler being so excited was very funny. I mean, he's a young guy. He's younger than me. He's like 19. But I wanted to know what all the excitement was about, so, because, Valbander was running in and out of the basement and talking to people and stuff like that, and he would never show anybody. But, one day, while he was gone, I knew his schedule enough that I went down into the basement and looked, and it was just a chest full of mithril. Like, there had to be like 25 ingots there at least. So I closed it up and then ran back upstairs and pretended like I never saw it. And eventually, I admitted to Valbander that I looked at it. He was kind of mad, but he understood my curiosity, being, my age once. And actually invited me to help him with something, a deal, he said. And so later that day, we went into the catacombs, and I'm pretty good with a bow. I was trained with it for a while because living on the outside, you got to take care of some rodents, basically. And it feels really good to knock out a skeleton after all you've shot in your life is like rats and kobolds. But yeah, we made our way all the way down to the lowest wing, the most recently added one. And there was the Arcanist, the High Elf. He was there, covered in blood. And there was a much shorter man in purple robes. And those things, there had to be like 6 of them, covered in black scales and so tall. The little guy in the purple robes started asking Valbander about some crystal. He kept saying that he didn't know anything about it, and then the black guys, the big scaly fellas, attacked, and I just started running. I don't know what happened to Valbander. And he can swing a sword really well, but his right arm's kind of taken some damage from that hammer. But, yeah, and one of them was chasing me, actually. As I ran out of the crypt, it just followed. It seemed to get blinded by the light a little bit when we came out in the sunlight, almost like the gods hated him. But then he just kept on my tail. I eventually just outthought him and hid. And now I'm here. And it's not good. Does the jeweler, George, know anything about this? About this crystal or anything? Or is he still here? Can we interrogate him? Is he hiding like you? No, I don't think so. His shop is still open. It's the only jeweler in town. He's got some weird business habits, though. He's 19 and he's really good at what he does, but he'll sell like a granite ring for like a gold when with his craftsmanship it's worth more. It's like he wants people to see his art more than he wants to run a business, but that's not a good way to run a shop. All right, well, I have just about everything, so we should go into the crypts then. Yeah, there's 2 ways to get into the crypts. One is through the normal way, which is where you go to the graveyard and you go to the big door, and that way it's not closed off, but they're not really letting people in. It's safe to go in and they won't stop you, but Yeah, they just kind of stopped. People just stopped going in. It used to be a cool thing, like you go and visit your family, and now it's a bit more dire. There's another way though. Inside the playhouse, you can go through there, but you'd have to get by the headmaster, and he's a scary fella. Yeah. All right. Well, I have everything I need. Sleep easy, by the way, Jack. One of those scary things is now dead. So, carry on. At that, I personally left the room and went to look for somebody who was selling wares. Not explicit wares, but wares for stuff like making more guns. After walking around a bit, I ran into two people. Sorry, gentlemen. I looked up and saw two drow women. Ladies, I'm very sorry about that. I'll be taking my leave. At that, I walked backwards, keeping my eyes on them cautiously, and they slowly faded into nothing, while their faces were in the worst form of disgust. For those that don't know, the Drow society is run entirely by women. It is matrilineal, with men being seen as scum. I have just made a butt of myself. Regardless, I walked over to another table where a guy looked like he knew everything and started talking with him. He said his name was Tommy. Hey, Tommy, I'm trying to find someone who's selling tools of a smaller sort, things for precision working. You're not going to find that here. You know that, right? Well, I was just thinking things for like making cylindrical objects, stuff like an improvement to smithing tools. Oh, you mean like proper tinkering tools? Yeah, no, you won't find that here. You won't find that until you get to, well, maybe Duval. Stormwind would definitely have some, and Harford will have some too. Alright, thanks. I'll be seeing you later. Yeah, take care. At that, I saw that Shava and Bill had gone back to the bar and were starting to talk with Tony. I walked up and heard that they were talking about something that he only saw because Tony technically apparently didn't exist, being apparently a ghost. When he walked outside, there were weird things, and the wire that, like a network of wires from each statue to another that he can't pass. Apparently, when the fifth statue broke, it shattered and turned into a thin line going the opposite direction, rather than a wall that he couldn't pass. He also doesn't like to go around that place, apparently. It seems to be draped in shadow in his perspective. After that, he asked if we wanted anything else, and asked why I looked so nervous around the two women. I simply said, what women? I can't see them, friend. They're two nice ladies, though. After that, he asked if they wanted anything to drink, and both of them threw knives at him. Or rather, threw him, as, again, he didn't exist. Then all of us hastily left the bar. Tales of Teledar is written and produced by Alex Peer. The entire story is based off of a campaign where Alex Peer plays one William Conningsby. The campaign is DM'd by Luke Warner. If you'd like to support the show in any way, we have a Patreon. It's Studio Warlock at patreon.com. And we have one tier. It's $5, and for $5 you get all of the artworks that I'm working on in high resolution. And along with that, you get all of the scripts to all of these. Undoctored, unedited. If I improved the last bit, then it just won't be there. And stuff like that. So, yeah. And that's about it. This episode came out a little late because we had hiatus due to one of us working, but now we're back on track, and we're hopefully going to be back on a weekly schedule. So until next time, safe travels, and happy hunting. Studio Warlock hopes that you've enjoyed this program.